Good morning and welcome to this morning's webinar. My name is Daryl Moon and I'll be your host today. This is the fifth webinar in a series that we're doing of short 30-minute webinars on the best practices of managing population mental health. Brought to you by Going on Offense and sponsored by Resilience Pro. Now the recordings of each of these are posted just the day of the webinar. So if you have any interest in going back and watching the prior four webinars that we've done, they're loaded there on Going on Offense. We've also recorded over 30 webinars just since the pandemic started in an effort to support people who are struggling emotionally. And so there's May's webinars, April's webinars, June's webinars, and we've had experts from across the country dealing with all kinds of issues relative to supporting people's emotional well-being. Would encourage you to take advantage of those. Now, the pandemic has truly heightened the need to address mental health. Now, we've had the opportunity of managing population mental health for over 20 years in a pure ACO, Accountable Care Organization type format, where the profits came from keeping people healthy and early intervention rather than simply increasing the rates every year. It's been an abundance strategy, meaning instead of kind of the historic way to manage mental health of let's restrict care, let's give people everything they need as soon as we can get them in and as soon as we can get them the care. So the whole strategy has been if you give people help early and give people a lot of help, you actually spend less in the long run. And we've proven that that's possible. We're sharing through these webinars, this series on best practices, what we've learned over the last 20 years in practicing or managing population health in that arena. And so let me just set the stage for today's topic. As mentioned last week, the risk factors for the greatest impact or that have the greatest impact on healthcare costs are depression and uncontrolled stress. A study that was done by Hero and published in the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine many years ago showed that when you look at the various risk factors, those two risk factors tower over all of the risk factors. Those who have depression have 90% higher claims than those who don't have depression. And those who have uncontrolled stress have 46% more claims than those who don't. Compare that with tobacco, where it's only 15%, or poor exercise with only 10%, or poor nutritional habits with 9%. So of all the things that an employer or a health plan should be focused on in terms of risk factors, nothing's more important than emotional and mental health issues like depression and uncontrolled stress. Now, last week we shared that a Deloitte study that had been done that talked about the 4 levels of population management when it comes to mental health. It's kind of like a funnel that's upside down. The top tier is everyone, and that's produce a great company culture and create awareness so that people know, are open, willing to talk about it, support each other. That's kind of your first tier, and that has the greatest ROI. In fact, the ROI in doing that is 8.4 to 1, and that's what we talked about in last week's webinar, is the strategies you can implement to really drive culture and awareness. The next level going down the funnel is 60% of people are experiencing some level of mental health distress that's affecting their job, and so a proactive approach to supporting mental health is needed for that particular tier. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about how companies can implement free software that actually monitors the emotional state and other well-being states of the workforce so that you can proactively reach out to those people and not wait for them to be reactive. The next level is more of a reactive mental health support, which is where a lot of the EAP world sits, where here's a resource. If you need help, call us, contact us. We're there to help you in a preventive level of service. And about 20% of the population are having mental health symptoms serious enough that they'll react or that they need that reactive health care. And then the final tier at the bottom is mental health treatment, which is about 9%. Today, we're going to talk about how you shift to where instead of people getting, which happens most often, people get the help in the treatment side, how do you shift that to where people get most of the care on the prevention side so they don't need to get the care on the treatment side? And that's been the strategy of this approach we've taken for many years. And we've learned that when you can get a lot more people into prevention, 80 to 90% of everyone can get everything they need within a prevention level of care. And only 10% or 20% need to go into treatment, which is really just a switch and an opposite to what normally happens. Few people get help in prevention, most people get the help in the treatment. So I'll give you an example of kind of the EAP world is there to kind of be that early intervention, prevention level of care. But we all know that there are many EAPs across the country that offer wonderful services, but they're not getting very high utilization. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to the global director of behavioral health for a large, prominent US company, and he was describing or discussing how frustrated he is and how many times over the years he's used different EAPs, but they'll come in, make lots of promises, but the utilization just isn't there. He can't get people to use the service. So finally, he decided that he was just gonna have his own EAP, hire his own counselors, put them in each of their different major locations. And he's very proud of the fact that he's been able to drive EAP utilization up to 15%. I said, that's great. That's exactly 15 to 20% should really be the goal of where you drive that early intervention. Another conversation I had a couple of weeks ago with a benefits manager of a large company, we were talking about, the fact that he offered an EAP with 5 visits and that was good. But then he said, but I'm only getting 2% utilization. I'm not really impacting the population if I'm only getting 2%. And we know that across the country, the average EAP is really seeing 3 to 5% utilization. And that's not enough to drive early intervention. Now, our most important strategy over the last 20 years, bar none of how we've managed population mental health, has been partnering with a very generous employee assistance program called Blomquist Health Solutions. I'm honored today to have the CEO of Blomquist Health Solutions with us so that we can talk a little bit about that. How do you really fill an EAP, and how do you as an employer partner with your EAP to expand those resources and get more people into early intervention? Cameron, let me take a minute now and introduce you, or I just did, but let me give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Daryl. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in your webinar today. So I've worked in mental health and healthcare operations for almost 20 years and learned a lot along the way and continue to enjoy working in that arena. And it's been especially interesting to be a part of Blomquist Health Solutions. As Daryl said, it's an innovative strategy to EAP that you don't see in other organizations and in other providers. And the company was started 30 years ago with some very interesting ways of addressing some of these challenges that we'll be discussing today and that we're all seeing that are becoming more and more prevalent in society and in our businesses and companies. And so it's been good to be a resource to really help people succeed in overcoming some of those challenges. And really, like Daryl mentioned, it really comes down to what kind of utilization are we seeing. That's really when you're successful as an EAP, is when you're getting those utilizations numbers to a point where people are able to get the help that they really need.
So let's start there, Cameron, and talk a little bit about how do you get that high utilization? How do you drive people into early intervention? What are some of the strategies that you found to be successful?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach to that. There's not just one thing you can do that's going to accomplish that, but rather it's a multiple different avenues that really help to achieve that success. And I'll talk through some of those that we utilize. I think one of the most important things is each company needs an assigned representative, someone from the EAP that is really there to make sure that their needs are being met. That person should be contacting the company on a regular basis, providing feedback about how the services are going, requesting feedback on what we could be doing better, requesting information on what the needs of the employees are, because the strategy is not going to be the same for every industry. Your employees may be different at an IT company versus a manufacturing company, and are you tailoring your services to meet that population? And then also making sure that you're providing feedback to the company about the success of the services being offered, and obviously still maintaining confidentiality. That's really important. Another thing that is important in that strategy is that you are getting to know and provide services to the supervisors of the people who are your coming to see you. So as part of that, we will spend time providing training to the supervisors. What is it that you can do to provide support to your employees, and what resources are available through your EAP that you can help your employees tap into? Oftentimes, the employees in many organizations where they have an EAP that's not really involved in the organization don't even know the EAP exists. And if that's the case, you're failing in that regard. But if the supervisors are aware of, here's strategies you can incorporate that will help you be a better supervisor and also provide more support to your employees, let's talk about those. Let's give you some strategies. Let's give you some tips. Let's give you some tools that you can use to really help your employees to succeed and overcome the challenges that they're facing. We're seeing more and more where the personal challenges are influencing people's ability to be successful in their work environment, and we can help with that. Also, another strategy that's really important is that you're providing workshops at the work site by those individuals that provide the services. So having a therapist go out to a work site and spend some time with the employees there and helping them understand what services are available and what can they do to help be more successful with those challenges as they come. There's a couple advantages to that. One is it gives them more tools that they can use personally. But secondly, they get to know someone from the EAP, someone that they hopefully can relate to, someone that they feel comfortable with. So when then it gets to a point where someone is considering that they need some additional help, it's not so scary for them to make that phone call. It's not so scary for them to reach out to someone because they already know, hey, I remember when John was here from our EAP. He's a good guy. He's down to earth. He understands our situation here at this company. I think he could help me with my challenges. That comfort level is huge. You know, there's a lot of talk about the stigma that exists within mental health and people's unwillingness to reach out. Anything we can do to break down that wall will be long-term success for the employee and for the company. And so having that there, having those faces, you know, face-to-face. Another thing we do where it allows people to have that opportunity to see is we will go on site in crisis situations. So if you're an employer and you have an unexpected death of an employee, or you have a worksite injury that's severe, or there's an accident on site, something that will increase the anxiety level of people. If your EAP can send someone on site that can come in and talk to those that may be struggling, pull a group together, talk about some strategies that can be implemented to help those that may have a higher anxiety level because of this situation. One more opportunity to strengthen your relationship with the company, with the employees, and help to alleviate some of that fear of getting mental health services. So I think those are you know, 3 or 4 different strategies that really help an organization to increase their utilization and at the same time increasing the comfort level of employees in reaching out.
Well, and just to go back to that whole supervisory training issue, you know, the studies show that people are more willing to share and to discuss the challenges that they're facing in life. It might affect their attendance, it might affect their punctuality with their supervisor, and the supervisor is often the ones who have the, you know, can have a sense that something's going wrong. And training those supervisors in those critical conversations as to how you bring up the resource of an EAP and how do you make a referral in the EAP is critical to get people to use the EAP. And so to just, you know, to not add that supervisory training and to not do it on a regular basis, because it's not a one-time done. You know, there's that constant need to train supervisors on how do you leverage the value that the EAP can be as a partner to the company. So thanks for bringing that one up.
Yeah, I think you make an excellent point too, in that it's not a one-time thing. You know, it doesn't work to go into a company, you know, when a company gets a new AP and new AP shows up on the first week and they do their little training and then you never see them again. what'll happen is utilization will be spiked for that first, maybe month or so after they've been thinking about it, and then the utilization will just drop right back down to where it's not being very effective. You've got to be in there regularly. And another thing that helps too is in regards to the number of visits you're allowing people to have, right? Most EAPs will give you a set limit of visits. Maybe you get 4 or you get 5 or whatever. That's not always what's in the best interest of the employee. And so ideally, you're not setting those limits. Now, there are some states where that's a problem, like California, but most it's not. And so really what you're doing is you're providing enough service to address the problem. And what that means is it's really a solution-focused therapy. It's not, let's talk about your problems, and that's just what we're going to do every time you come in. What we do is let's talk about your problems and what are some solutions that we can help you put into your own life to help you deal with these challenges when they come, because they're probably not going to go away. And then you can help them get through that in the appropriate number of visits to accomplish that. And there's no question that there will be times where the level of need may exceed what can be done by an EAP, even a really good one. And that's okay to refer them to their benefit, but that should not be the majority. In fact, it should be the minority by far.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is one of you don't see a no limit EAP very often. It's a very unique thing, but it makes a lot of sense. Yes, an EAP has to have a limit, but the limit is based on the need that the person has. So if the person's need is such that they need to be referred on into long-term, more acute levels of therapy, then make that referral. But if what their need is such that it can be resolved with solution-focused counseling, don't put a limit on the number of visits. Give them that solution-focused counseling until it resolves the issue. And I think it also addresses that whole utilization. If people know that there's a limit, it's like, well, gosh, why do I start at the EAP when I'm only going to be limited? I may not be able to finish things off. When you can say, well, there's no specific limit, then people are more apt to go in and try the EAP, and then if they need to be referred on, they get referred on. So excellent point. And I think that is one of the real uniquenesses of the solution that's been our partner, and why it's been so effective at driving up utilization and getting more people to use it, and taking care of more people in that prevention level. Let's talk a little bit about how your EAP can be a partner in enhancing the emotional well-being of your workforce.
Sure. As we talked a moment ago about tools that can be used to help people, people don't normally have those tools or know what to do without someone providing that training and that coaching to them, and don't often realize, maybe sometimes they underestimate what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
And as an EAP, that's where we can be a valuable resource. And so we want to get people in to see someone that can help them develop that tools and improve their emotional well-being. So what's the benefit to doing that, right? If you're an employer, why do you care? Yeah. And I know that's kind of a facetious question, but there are a lot of benefits to the success of your workforce if they're feeling like they are emotionally able to deal with the challenges that they're going to face, right? And things like absenteeism and overall productivity, even the relationships that exist amongst workers within the workforce, all those things are influenced by someone's emotional well-being. And so it's important that we also have the ability to provide prompt access when those come up. So in the typical, mental health environment, you may call an organization to get some help, and they may tell you, you got a 3-month wait. So what happens during that 3 months? It doesn't mean the problem just goes away because they can't be seen for 3 months. Often it means that the problem's getting worse because they're not getting anybody to support or help them. And so it's important that when that emotional challenges are coming up, that you're providing a prompt resource to help address that. And your EAP should be able to do that, should be able to take that call from a client that's worried, or from a supervisor that's worried about their employee, and say, hey, this is something that we can help you address. Let's get you scheduled right away, or let's take care of it right now on the phone, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
And get things to a point where they feel like they can manage their life, manage their work responsibilities, and be successful in their role as an employee.
Very good. I'm going to mention to our attendees that you are welcome to send in questions. Please do. You can use your control box, and there's a question area within there where you can send in a question. We'd love to address those as you have an opportunity. The other thing I'd like to mention to you is that there's a couple of handouts. One is the presentation that was done last week that you can download, as well as information about Resilience Pro. So take advantage while the webinar is going on to download the handouts that are available through your control box. Cameron, I've got a question for you. Talk a little bit about how an EAP can be a gateway into the mental health benefit. Instead of just simply say, well, here's a resource and then here's your insurance. How does an EAP play as a gateway, and what's the value of an EAP playing the gateway into the benefit?
Yeah, so one way to manage that is for a company to funnel all of their mental health employee-related concerns through the EAP. So how that operates is, so as an EAP provider, the cost of an EAP solving your mental health problems is going to be much cheaper than going through insurance, much, much cheaper. And it's cheaper for the employee because they have no copay that they've got to pay. There's no deductibles that they've got to pay. And it's cheaper for the employer in that they're not paying the high rates that you pay for insurance. So if you funnel your employees through the EAP can do that initial assessment. They can meet with the employee, talk with the employee, get an idea what their challenges are, what their concerns are, and majority of the time, be able to help them address those right there in the EAP. And then in those circumstances where they're not able to, they can then help them find a provider that's within the network of their insurance. The advantage of doing it this way is if employees don't fully understand the EAP benefit, they'll often go directly to a provider within their insurance network, and then your costs are going up. Whereas if you funnel them through an EAP, you have the opportunity for someone that's an expert in the field to be able to determine what is going to best help this employee. And oftentimes that can be through the EAP at a much lower cost than it would be if they were to go outside.
Very good. And let me just mention that mental health parity required that whatever you do on the mental health side, you do on the medical side. So in most cases, there's not a hard gate on the medical side. In other words, you have to go to this. Maybe in some HMOs, there's a hard gate where you have to go to a primary care physician before you get any services, but that's not common. And so you can't put a hard gate in the mental health in most cases, but you can still be very successful, even if it's not a hard gate, to just be a gateway where you really promote the EAP as the best way to access your mental health benefits, because they're well versed on what those benefits are, how you can access those, and like you said, many people can get everything they need within the EAP and it never has to go into the benefit.
Yeah.
So here's a question. What about the workplace, drug-free workplace programs? How does the EAP kind of coordinate with drug-free workplace programs? Good question.
Yeah. That's a great service. What many employers don't always clearly understand is how do you best address situations where you may be dealing with employees that are struggling with substance abuse or addictions of some kind. And what's even more challenging is when those employees start to have those addictions or substance abuse impacting what they do at work, or show up to work and then it's a challenge that's got to be addressed immediately, et cetera, et cetera. We, as an EAP provider, they can be of assistance to you in helping you to address those challenges. They can help you develop what a drug-free workplace program looks like, what the steps are that need to be followed, and what the expectations would be for the EAP, for the employer, and for the employee in a situation like that. What you want to do is help the employee to successfully overcome those addictions. And traditionally, the way employers have often dealt with those situations is not necessarily helping the employee, It really is more of a, what do we do to mitigate risk? Well, an EAP can help mitigate the risk at the same time helping the employee, right? Because you really want to get that employee back to a healthy state where they can return to the work environment and really contribute to the success of the company. Just mitigating risk on the employer side doesn't always accomplish that. It may immediately stop the risk, but then you've got a hole you've got to fill. So as part of a drug-free workplace program, an EAP can really help the supervisor identify, what do we do in this situation? As part of the program, there's usually steps that are clearly identified of what happens in certain situations, how do you address those, and then what are the steps that we're going to do going forward? And the EAP can help manage, do we need to have regular drug testing for that employee to make sure that they're being successful? Do they need to participate in intensive outpatient treatment or some sort of substance abuse program? And what are we doing to monitor to make sure that they're doing that? What are we doing to make sure that they're meeting the expectations of the employer during that time? And what is that time frame? From the time that we identify there's a problem until we feel like they've been able to successfully return to work and successfully meet the needs of the program, which will probably be ongoing beyond when they return to work. You'll work together with the company to help address that. Then the company isn't taking the whole burden of, what do we do when we've got someone that's dealing with a substance abuse issue? We can help as an EAP to really address that, help the company walk through that, help the employee be successful, help them be successful not just at work but also at home, because you know that if it's impacting them at work, it's impacting them at home too.
Right.
And how do we help them get through that as well?
So there's a question about the cost of EAP, and this is probably one of the ones that I'm most passionate about. You know, if you look back 40 years ago, 50 years ago when EAPs first started, there was high utilization. They were very generous in their nature. But what's happened over time is that EAPs know that most are paid on a PEPM basis, which puts the EAP in a position to where the lower the utilization, the more money they make. And so while companies have, gone out shopping for EAPs, it's often on a price. And so EAPs have become commoditized. And EAPs charge less and less and less in order to get the business, but they charge less and then they can't provide the service. And so they get 2% utilization or 1% utilization because they can't afford to give any more than that. And I think the pandemic has really driven people to more use their EAP, which has put a lot of EAPs in a position of, gosh, I can't do this. I can't afford to provide this level of service. So talk a little bit about how it's really the ROI is spend a little bit more money on the EAP and you'll spend a whole lot less money on the back end.
Yep, yeah, for sure. This is one of those situations where you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
If you pay for $1 or $1.50 EAP, you're going to get $1.50 worth of services. And so if you look at what we've been discussing today, the services we've talked about are not going to be provided by $1.50 EAP. It will cost the organization more than that. That being said, as you just said, Daryl, the benefits outweigh that initial cost by a long shot, in that you're being proactive and taking care of those employees, and you're seeing financial benefits after the fact through improved productivity, through reduced insurance costs, all those expensive, it's not cheap to address mental health outside of an EAP. And we're being proactive in doing that. The incentive for most EAPs is to provide the least amount of services as possible. And that does no one any favors. It's not good for the employer. The only people it benefits is the EAP. And so when you're partnering with an EAP, you got to be sure that you're partnering with someone that their success, how they measure their success is by the success of you as an employer, your employees, and really the utilization. If they consider successful utilization in that 3 to 5% range, that's not someone you want to partner with.
Yeah, you're not going to really get the overall ROI if all you're dealing with is those few people who are serious enough that they may reach out and they'll get over that hurdle. You got to be, early intervention is the key, no question about it. And like we talked about earlier, you know, the ROI in getting someone into treatment earlier is much better than waiting for someone to become so serious that they now need to go into treatment or they're reacting to their symptoms. You know, the whole key is to move up that funnel and get more people in and make it very easy to get in. And you need to spend a little bit more money on an EAP that's going to offer that. So best ROI. In fact, I get the opportunity to get in front of groups of CEOs regularly, and when you get them for a little bit of time and not just a quick few minutes here and there, but they really think about how an EAP can partner with them as an incredible support at dealing with personal problems within their workforce. I remember a few years ago, I was on an airplane with another CEO. We got to talking about, you know, being CEOs, and his comment was, you know what, I've decided I'm going to hire a psychologist to come into my office or into my work site once a month, and just because he said when one employee has a problem, it isn't just that employee's problem. They bring it to work, and now it's their entire department's problem, and everyone's productivity is affected. I said, you need a good EAP. He goes, what's an EAP? And so we talked about it. What is an employee assistance program? And it is like hiring a psychologist to deal with those issues so they don't affect the productivity of the work site. So thank you very much for your questions. We're running out of time as we've tried to keep these to just 30 minutes. So let me just say thanks to Cameron. Appreciate your participation today. Remind you that Resilience Pro is the sponsor of these series, and a brochure describing the solution is available. You can download. Next week's webinar in the series of best practices of managing population mental health will be on proactive emotional health and measurement-based care. My guest panelist will be Jennifer Hunter. She's the CEO of MVitals. And just so you know, a few of our upcoming topics, in addition to next week's, will be solving the mental health provider shortage crisis and what we've done to do that, how important specialized case management for mental health is, population behavior change, and how you can affect population behavior change to address a lot of emotional problems. So those are just a few of the topics we'll be addressing in future huddles or webinars. We'll sign off now. Wish everyone a wonderful day, and hope you'll join us for an upcoming huddle. Thank you, and take care, and have a great one.